You are listening to Engage with GRADIFY. Now here's your host, Travis Manigan.
Today we have a good brother, a good friend of mine. His name is Don Thomas. He's the executive director of My Brother's Keeper of Charlotte-Mecklenburg, and we're glad to have you today.
Peace and blessings, man. Good to be here.
Really Peace and blessings.
Yes, sir.
Peace and blessings. Tell me, and for all of you who are listening, this is how Don Thomas is going to greet you every time he sees you.
Every time.
Zoom, in person. He's going to say peace and blessings. I just want to, where did you get that from? How did that come into your vernacular?
So back in the day, before I added blessings, it used to just be peace, right?
Peace,
just
yeah.
kind of the hip hop heads that I grew up around. You know what I mean? Yo, peace, peace, peace.
Peace.
Then came in contact here with some brothers, Jacotrin Potts and Jay Ferguson.
Mm-hmm.
Started to get acquainted with some of the revolutionaries that were doing some work in here back in the day, and peace and blessings was like something that they would say, and it kind of stuck with me. Like,
yeah.
yo, peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings. One of my colleagues said that when I say that, it's almost like a verbal sage to the environment, because
Sure.
we could be in a boardroom that's about to be a tense conversation, and
yeah.
peace and blessings. And oh yeah, peace and blessings. Okay, now we can get into what we're about to get into. Yeah. So that's all, man. Just,
so it's like a through line to the outcome of what you're seeking to do with every person you're interacting with.
Every single person that I encounter, they will always get that as a greeting. And low key, they'll get it as kind of, yo, peace and blessings. I'll talk to you in a minute. Like, when I'm coming, when I'm leaving, man. Peace and blessings, brother. Peace and blessings.
So that's the best way to make a segue.
For real.
To peace and blessings, so we segue out. But no, that's key, and that's a hallmark for you. Mm-hmm. But tell us a little bit about like the stat line of what is My Brother's Keeper. Mm-hmm. Tell us the mission of My Brother's Keeper.
Yeah.
And how you actually became the executive director, like what led you to that? Yeah. So give us the high level, and then back to even your time. I think you're from Chicago.
From Chicago.
So let's start from the high level and then work back from Chicago.
Perfect, man. So executive director of My Brother's Keeper, Charlotte-Mecklenburg, where our mission is to ensure that every black and brown boy in Mecklenburg County has every opportunity to achieve, and we do that by situating ourselves as a backbone organization of a collective impact effort, right? So what we're trying to say is that we are not designed to compete. We are designed to support, to resource, and to lift up those best practices of organizations that have proven impact, sure. Right? What we know here in this community is that a lot of the work, transformative work that's going on in community, a lot of that work is happening in silos, right? Mm-hmm. How do we create a linking social capital strategy? So we believe in social capital. We've created our own definitions around social capital. We believe that social capital is a relationship-based framework that facilitates the intersections between belonging, wealth, and well-being, right? Now, there's different levels to social capital: bridging, bonding, and linking. Because we are a backbone organization of a collective impact effort, linking social capital is vitally important to this work. So what is linking social capital? Linking social capital is linking systems, institutions, organizations through investments, through data, and through service delivery coordination. Mm-hmm. What we want to be able to do is that from early childhood education all the way to workforce development, that we can compartmentalize organizations. We can link organizations throughout that life course continuum. So every black and brown boy, when you're born, you have every opportunity to achieve. You have all the support necessary so you can fulfill your purpose without systemic, institutional, or organizational impediment. And we do that through linking organizations together, creating an ecosystem of transformation. That's kind of how we're designed and what we're made for. So we're not we're not a program. Mm-hmm. There's awesome programs that are happening in community. A lot of them have committed themselves to being a part of this MBK Alliance here locally. But what we know is we don't know who's doing the work per se. We're not linking it together. We want to be able to connect those best practices, right? We want to say, okay, here are the organizations that are involved in early education and workforce development and youth development and all these other things. Let's link them. So our young men have all the necessary support to fulfill their purpose.
So that's current.
That's current.
And it seems to me that you have envisioned and experienced these systems personally.
No question.
And you want to fix them, to have the system within the system inculcating black and brown boys. So let's go back all the way to the beginning.
Let's go back to the beginning.
Let's go back to the beginning, because
yeah,
that I know, and it fuels me to do what I do every day. And talk to me about how your experience as a black male in this country influences your work.
Yeah, man.
From young Don.
Some young Don, bro. Now, you know, rarely do I ever have conversations about young Don. You dig what I'm saying? But young Don has been a very privileged young man in this sense, that I have been surrounded by strong men. I have been surrounded by strong men, not perfect men.
Sure.
Right? Men who, in some instances, were previously incarcerated. Some men who didn't graduate from college, didn't go to college. Some things, but some very strong and principled men. Where I was able to understand manhood, understand how to take care of your family, how to move in this world as a black man.
And what we were getting in the 90s was a different message.
Yeah.
That our community didn't have fathers, that we didn't have strong black men in our community.
That's right.
But the reason why I kind of interrupt is because it's rare that you see people to pick up on that, because I believe more people have that.
No question.
But the media and society would tell you that you don't have it.
That's right.
So you almost get into a corner thinking that you're alone when you actually do have a lot of support around you.
That's right.
But you know, that's what I had to realize eventually as I, kind of look back and thought about how blessed and privileged I had coaches.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends' fathers were there. My father was there. I had an amazing stepfather, right? That showed me what it meant to the continuity. If I would just put my attention there.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
So.
And so in my journey, understanding these men that I had around is that, I got kicked out of school a lot. I'm talking about, like, I get kicked out of 6th grade. I got kicked out of 7th grade. I got kicked out of freshman year, right?
When you mean kicked out, that means like expelled. Yeah.
Expelled.
Yeah.
Played a little football, but no one was necessarily there to tell me the correlation between the field and the classroom, these kind of things. But God is good anyhow. There's some text that says that God will restore to you the years that the cankerworm and the caterpillar has eaten up. He will restore those years, but those years, in my estimation and from my own experience, become restored once there's a paradigm shift. We can talk about that a little later.
Because time becomes different.
Because time becomes different,
yeah.
right? There's lessons that are learned, so on and so forth. And just by God's grace and mercy, what will happen is that now the things that you thought you lost out on because of a paradigm shift, those things are brought right back to you. And as a matter of fact, you find yourself in this accelerated kind of framework to where what you thought you lost, you're back exactly where you ought to be.
And equipped.
And so I didn't graduate from high school, right? So I had to get like a GED and correspondence kind of framework in order to get my diploma.
Was that a specific program that CP? Were you in Chicago public schools?
I was in Chicago.
Okay.
And so just kind of went through, I forget the organization I went through, but it was kind of like just kind of a GED correspondent framework.
Was it an org, like what you're trying to facilitate, or was it just something that, was it a non-governmental organization, or was it within the school system?
It was definitely non-governmental.
Okay.
It was definitely non-governmental, where we kind of utilized their services to kind of get me back on track.
Wow.
And then I went to the Army, right?
Okay.
So after the Army, I got out the Army, and I was still, I came back to the block, and it was, I had friends. One of my good friends, Antonio, by the way, just graduated from Iowa State.
Big ups, Tony.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
40 years old. You dig what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Put in that
it's never
work.
too late.
Come on, bro. I came back to the block. Antonio was in a wheelchair. You dig what I'm saying? Got shot 12 times.
Wow.
Young bros that I grew up with, 40-year bids. It was like I came back to an environment, and I was trying to get back into some of the same things that I was getting involved in prior to going to the military and those kind of things. But it was just kind of this moment that I had where it was something has to change. Like this can't be my reality.
So for any students listening to this, what would you say to them after you've been out processed from your own community?
Right.
You've gone into matriculated to the Army. You've gone and probably traveled the world. They probably send you to different countries. But then if you come back to that same environment, how was that environment almost still going to derail you from what you were going to be like? How that we're talking about environment, you cannot
That's right.
necessarily deviate from where you are.
That's right.
Unless you really have someone that's pulling you an NGO, an experience, something that you can grab hold to say, this is not what I need to do.
This is not what I need to do. What's interesting is that it really was just a paradigm shift, man. It really was latching hold of the lessons that I have learned over time from my father, from uncles, from just a network of men that were around.
Right.
And because I understood what being a man is about, I knew that my actions were not lining up with it. And so it was this kind of self-conviction. Now what happens is, the dangerous part about it is a lot of our young brothers have never had the foundational teachings, the foundational principles that have been instilled in them, so they can even be in a psychological space where self-governance can happen.
Sure.
Right. So it's, you can't even govern yourself or have any type of, when we talk about self-control, there is nothing there if there's no principles by which that understanding has been established.
So you're speaking to operating within an environment, knowing that there's a governance structure that you should be operating in. And internally, and then some students in an environment and not having a governance structure that deviates from the environment.
That's right.
So you actually, by being able to recall and probably being separated from your environment for a little bit and then coming back, you had the contrast now. You had the dividing line.
Exactly.
And
the plumb line.
Yeah, right. It's right there. Okay. I'm operating outside of the realm of where I need to be.
Yeah. And if I want to go here, right?
And where was here for you?
Here, man, was I want to go to college and play ball.
Wow.
Like, I got out of the Army, I'm like, yo, I know I want to go to college. You know what I mean? One of the things that I picked up on when I was in the Army, my grandfather, Albert, or my mother's father, he read like a book a day, knew 5 different languages. You dig what I'm saying?
Wow.
He passed away when I was young. So when you hear these stories, you're like, oh, was that where my pool is for knowledge? Is that where I get that from? My grandfather, my father's father, Theodore, hard-working man, like businessman, bought everything he bought with cash. My grandmother never had to work a day in her life, like understanding finances, understanding how a man to support his family and handle business a certain kind of way.
Sure.
It was these type of lessons and principles that started to, as you get older, you're like, yo, what are you doing, bro? What are you doing? As a matter of fact, what even led me to the Army was, and we can probably move on after this, but this is a poignant story for the young brothers to really understand, is that I'm in the process of doing this GED, in the process of these kind of corresponding courses. And my homegirl, Nikki, and my best friend, Johnny, man, Nikki's parents were getting their vows renewed.
Okay.
And this was downtown Chicago. So she invited me and Johnny to go. We drove downtown. We went there. Now, mind you, Johnny and Nikki, they were both in college, right?
Wow.
So on the way going back home, they're talking about their college experience, right? The papers, the parties, the exams, like the whole experience, bro.
Right.
They're talking about their entire experience, and I'm in the back seat silent because I had nothing to contribute to this conversation. And it was providential, is because as I sit there and listen to this experience, I was battling in my own mind between success and failure, and being empowered and using your agency to do what you know you need to do, and complacency. It was an internal battle for me. I got out the car, I said peace, right? I literally didn't say nothing. Came in, changed my clothes, and I got a chair and I sat on the outside of the crib, and I was there like almost in tears. Wow. Because of the situation that I found myself in. My mom came out, and shout out to all the black moms out there who held their babies together, man, and kept us emotionally, psychologically strong. But she came out there and she said, son, what's wrong? And I just let her know, like, man, I don't feel like a man. Like, I'm not doing nothing. Like, I'm out here like just wilding out. Like, what am I doing with my life? You know what I mean? And she was like, well, son, and she started going down some things. And then I told her, I'm going to the Army. You dig what I'm saying? I had some court things I had to handle, this, that, and the other. And once I changed that paradigm there, 9 days later, I was at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Just that fast. Boom. Like,
wow.
Okay, you get your mind right, all of a sudden it was accelerated. So fast forwarding, man, got out the military, went to college. I was privileged to be able to play ball, D3, North Park University High School. College. Shout out to the to the Vikings. Captain all 4 years, defensive captain all 4 years. I went to college. I was 24 years old when I went as a freshman, right?
Non-traditional.
Non-traditional, baby. Shout out to all the non-traditional doggone students out there. Played ball, this kind of thing. I double majored in politics and government and biblical and theological studies. Has a few leadership positions on campus and that kind of thing. After that, I went to Chicago Theological Seminary, received a master's in religious leadership, social concentration and social transformation. I was a youth and family counselor for an organization, Community Human Services, where our niche is that we work with young men and women who are part of street organizations generationally. That was a distinction between just kind of a mentor organization that's supporting young people that have went wayward. Like, no, we actually, like, this is the family business for these young men. And so you can break down some, the knowledge and do all this kind of stuff, but then you have to realize, like, well, my grandfather is one of the founders. My father is a Latin king. My brothers are you know what I mean? Like,
wow.
like what you're asking me to do is put my life on the line. The environment. You dig what I'm saying? Like, I hear what you're saying. As a matter of fact, it's resonating with me. Don't get it twisted. I'm 15 years old. These young men that we were working with, 15, 16, 17 years old. Yo, what you're saying, Mr. Don, is resonating with me.
Right.
But the environment is not conducive. The atmosphere by which I exist is not supporting the knowledge.
The culture.
The culture.
Yeah.
You dig what I'm saying? And so that's when I started to think through very thoroughly, good brother, around this kind of macro work, systems change, transformation-oriented work.
Right.
What does it look like? Like, how do we change the environment? You know what I mean? Because what I do know is that if you have an environment, if you plant a seed and the environment and the atmosphere, you don't have to worry about the seed. The seed gonna do what it's supposed to do because the environment and the atmosphere is conducive.
Exactly.
It facilitates growth. It's just a part of what it does. But if I take that seed and I place it on the table, it ain't nothing's gonna happen because the environment is not conducive for the growth that we're hoping to get out of this seed. And too often, because of the incentive structures, we have not been incentivized to get to creating the environment. We have not been incentivized to create the ecosystem. You dig what I'm saying? It's like, no, you only deal with the crisis. So you just deal with the seed. You just take the seed. Don't worry about the environment. You just keep on speaking to the seed. You just keep on supporting the seed the best way you can. But don't necessarily incentivize creating the environment by which the seed can just, oh my goodness, you're going to college and you're college and career ready. Because the environment, the atmosphere is conducive for that type of growth, brother. And that's what I have been struggling with. And so the organization that I was working for, we had a 97% success rate with regards to recidivism, had a partnership with juvenile justice.
Wow.
Our young brothers were not going to jail. We had a few brothers whose lives were taken based on some things that they got involved in. Some of the brothers went back. You dig what I'm saying? So, it was great work, but we were in the trenches. We were in the trenches, man. And I love that work, by the way. I love that work. I love the young men that we were dealing with, we were struggling with. These brothers who are being raised by killers. And you're coming in with a different narrative, and you can see them wrestling. You can see them wrestling with their own existence.
Giving them a plumb line.
Come on, brother.
Giving them a divided line.
I'm telling you, right? So then when you come to Charlotte, we lost funding, right? So what happens with NGOs and in a lot of environments, everything is contingent upon granting. A lot of things are contingent upon the emotional disposition of folks with deep pockets and priorities of the government, right? To resource these organizations that are doing great work. We lost funding. So as I sit back, and my wife and I both working for the same organization, we both lost those jobs immediately. 3 kids trying to figure out what we're going to do. My mom and dad had already moved here to Charlotte. So we just started thinking one day in the midst of this blizzard, you can barely see across the street. We're picking the kids up from school. And we just kind of thinking like, life is kind of crazy right now. What are we going to do?
Exactly.
You dig what I'm saying? And I was like, man, let's go to Charlotte. Like, let's go out there. Mom and daddy out there in Charlotte. I've never been ever, like let's go to Charlotte.
And
see
now what
it
year is this?
This is 2014, right? So we go to Charlotte. You know what I mean? We come here, and my wife, who's a social worker by trade, she ended up getting a job as a social work supervisor with the county. And her salary doubled both of our, it was both of our salaries put together when we were in Chicago. So I didn't have to necessarily we weren't making no change in Chicago, by the way. So when
moved to Charlotte. That's it.
You feel me? So so she's doing that. So I didn't necessarily have to it wasn't such a I need to find a gig. I got to go. What I did was, and by God's providence, I was able to volunteer with an organization called ExodusFoundation.org, where their mission is to stop the flow of African Americans to prison. Because I was involved in work around ending mass incarceration and all this kind of stuff with the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference. Shout out to Dr. Iva. Shout out to Dr. Jeremiah Wright. Because I was involved in that organization and that's the work that I was involved in, we came here. I was so privileged because I love the people that I was able to do work. I was on the block when I came to Charlotte. I learned Charlotte from the ground up, right? Greer Heights, knocking on doors, peace and blessings on the block. Before there was that little learning center on the block, there used to be a strip little corner store that I used to be right there on the block with the brothers talking through some of the resources that Exodus was trying to provide and what we were looking to do in that regard, man. So learning Charlotte from the ground up, ended up working with CMS as a community partnership coordinator. I went to this when Project Lift was kind of popping off. I went to working with the Project Lift schools, and I would go to the principals, and I would ask the principals to give me 10 or 15 of their best. Give me some young men to give me 10 or 15 of your best. And so as they started to look through and started trying to find the A honor roll, this, that, and the other, I will let them know this is what I mean, right? I want to get the ones that you have chronic absenteeism. I want the ones that you have the most behavior issues with. That's what I want. Right? That's what they gave me. And the reason that I did that is because when I sat in front of the young men, this is around the paradigm shift, because love is at the root of everything that I do. I really love the people, man. It's important to note. When I would sit down with those young men, I would literally ask them, do they know why they're here? So they would come in with the little ankle bracelets on, house arrest kind of framework, and I would ask them, do you know why you're here? Why we in trouble? No, I went to your principal and I asked your principal for the best. And this is who he gave me. So that is going to be the impetus. That is the point of departure. I asked for the best. This is why you're here. Now let's build. And from there, it was, oh, man. Now you got the brothers saying peace and blessings when they see me. Oh, peace and blessings, Mr. Don. Peace and blessings. Let's start to build. Let's start to think through what it is to be a man. What are the cognitive strategies that we need to be thinking through? What is your responsibility? This, that, and the other. Now you can absorb it all because, I'm not coming in here condemning you. No,
you're not a project.
You're the best, baby.
You're not a project.
You're not a project. No,
right.
Brother. We in this together. We in this together. Iron sharpens iron. It is the praxis of Ubuntu. I'm doing this because you, me, I'm you. This is what this is, brother. I exist only because of you. You exist because of me.
Exactly.
We cease to exist without each other. It's interesting times, man. So from there, the Chetty report came out, Charlotte being 50 out of 50 with regards to economic mobility, second largest financial hub outside of Wall Street. But if you're born in poverty here in Charlotte, 9 times out of 10, you're going to die in poverty in Charlotte. So we had to wrestle with that. And so when a position came open to be a community impact coordinator or director of whatever the title was, I applied. This is the work, because now they're talking about systems change and they're talking about how to change the environment. You latched on to that. I'm like, I came in and just all the dozens of notebooks that I had filled up around what that environment looks like. I came in like, oh, this is my wheelhouse. Now we're talking. And exactly. Now it's informed by years of experience on the block, years of experience of really being entrenched in saving lives. Now you can come and allow that experience and that knowledge that you gain from those that were proximate to the challenges and issues in community, to allow that to inform what type of system, what type of ecosystem needs to be created so we can institutionalize and sustain transformation. And so now when this opportunity came up with My Brother's Keeper to really start thinking through a systems approach, a collective impact approach, a backbone, an environment development kind of strategy to support Black and brown boys, it was just in my wheelhouse, man. And so I'm privileged and I'm excited to be the executive director, honored, in fact, to be the executive director of this organization, man. But we love the people, and that's really what it boils down to. We are vision driven and data informed. We have all black and brown men on our board because we're laser focused on black and brown boys. Mm-hmm. It's our sons, it's our nephews. This is who we're trying to save, right? And in fact, they're saved themselves because we're saving one another. It's Ubuntu all wrapped into one, man. So I'm privileged and excited about that, good brother. Yes, sir.
No, that's powerful, and it's a natural progression from where you were when you were in the environment to now being a creator of environment. Mm-hmm. And I believe your organization, My Brother's Keeper, is and there's many My Brother Keepers around the country.
That's right, 191, by the way.
191 My Brother Keeper organizations that are looking to change their environments.
That's right.
Or create environments that have been that have traditionally and historically been set up to keep black and brown families in a certain position.
That's right. Intentionally,
right? Intentionally. Caste system, economic caste. So how does My Brother's Keeper create that environment? Because we're talking about heady work.
No question.
We're talking about me being a history teacher and constantly studying history. Mm-hmm. It is undeniable what's happening, especially with just a small example of the Tulsa race massacre. That's right. of 1921, the centennial of that. Mm-hmm. We don't need to go into the particulars of it, but let's just talk about the spirit of it.
Yeah.
Of the fact that there was one infraction, right, that led to a mob at the police department deputizing white men to just say, go kill you.
Go kill, that's right.
Go kill, go burn. I'm going to back even out from the actions of that, but what is the spirit of that? And diffuse that spirit in the sense of, when I look at your education system and we have to share public dollars to educate these people, we're going to, it's going to be an uphill battle to fight against the spirit of what we need to do for that community, even though they're citizens.
That's right.
Even though they're equal citizens.
That's right.
Ever since, the Equal Protection Clause, the Equal Protection Amendment to the Constitution. These are full citizens.
That's right.
That have where the rule of law is not ruling all citizens. There's a hierarchy, and then there's some allowance. So we talk about things that are happening in the affirmative, but then there's some things that are happen to where they will hold back.
That's right.
Resources.
That's right.
You are positioning your organization to change that and to build something totally different for the future.
That's right.
We're not looking backwards. You all aren't looking backwards. We're not looking backwards. What does it look like, and what does this environment look like from your organization standpoint?
Yeah, one, it's important to note that this is a co-creation, right? A co-creation. We have to understand. I think you astutely articulated is that there is a zeitgeist that has been created. There is a spirit of the culture where it transcends law. Obviously, law can be there, but we can still watch George Floyd for 8 minutes and 40 some odd seconds be choked out.
Exactly.
We can literally watch that, knowing
the spirit,
knowing the spirit. The zeitgeist is allowing him to do this, not the rule of law. And so
thankfully the rule of law did.
Thank you that the rule of law it has some semblance of power.
And thank God for technology, video cameras.
Exactly. And I'm sure we can get into that a little later around how technology has supported many of these efforts. But I think that what we're trying to do with My Brother's Keeper, Charlotte-Mecklenburg, and what that looks like is, one, we have to understand two pillars that kind of guides our work. One is sustainability, one is institutionalization, right?
Sure.
We want to make sure that the transformative outcomes and impact that we are hoping for and seeing, that we can sustain it. Right. This is how the elders trained me. You have to be able to sustain the work. And then you have to be able to institutionalize the work, right? It has to be a part of the very fabric around how we move, how we interact. Data informs that work. That's how you institutionalize it. What are the policies, the practices, the procedures? What's the budget line items? So what are the things that, you know, that we're doing as a matter of fact? And then how are we building an institution? What is the institution that's going to create and continue, right, the thought process and the zeitgeist that we're trying to create? One of transformation, one of liberation, right? One of fairness, equity, and justice. How do we build that? And what is the institution by which that's going to be informing generations to come?
Sure.
One of the things that also informs our work is that we have posterity in mind, right? So when we think about institutionalizing or sustaining, it's just not for the now. As a matter of fact, we like to say that we are short-term responsive and long-term strategic. So not only do we want to deal with the immediate crisis, right? The house is burning without question.
Sure.
We're dealing with the immediate crisis, but then how do we get at the heart of why the crisis even exists? And then start to put the resources towards the root cause, right? Simultaneously dealing with the immediate manifestation of, and then start to think through the long-term ways by which we can start to have some impact on the structural impediments, on the systemic impediments that has caused the kind of environment that we're trying to militate against. So another thing is that we understand, because we're laser focused on men, young men, is that being an upright man is not a matter of coincidence. It is deliberate and it is exacting. And so it is important that as we engage with organizations that are serving young men, is that as you come into this MBK kind of alliance, one of the things that we are, that we stand firm on is that we want to make sure that we are being a part of training and raising upright men, upright men that have committed themselves to holding the line, right? Holding the line, unwavering, putting their hands to the plow to grind it out, to grind it out until we have created the conditions that we desire, right? This kind of undergirds My Brother's Keeper, which is why we have created the MBK Vanguard, right? The MBK Vanguard is our volunteer strategy. But as we think through volunteerism, when I'm having conversations with some of our partner organizations that are serving young people, a lot of the things that you hear is, man, we need black men. We need some men of color to be mentors and to volunteer and to speak to our young men here and to be in this space over here. Okay, let's do that. My Brother's Keeper should be responsible for that. We want to raise men, train men. We want to recruit them. We want to educate them, right? We're asking all men of color to commit themselves to leading, leveraging, and lifting in order to build and leave a legacy. If you can commit yourself to that, okay, now that we've educated, let's get you activated, right? Let's start to think through some healing circles that we have coming up. Let's start to think through some of the ACEs and some of these psychological and socio-emotional things that you may be dealing with. Let's work through that as well, because we need you whole. From there, let's deploy you. We have organizations that are looking for you around the doggone county. Let's deploy these men that have been trained, men that have committed themselves to leading, leveraging, and lifting, and getting them out into community, because we're concerned about the environment. As a matter of fact, out of Opportunity Insights, David Williams, who's the executive director out of Harvard for this organization, there's some data that suggests that if you have a young black boy who may not even have a father in the home, if that young man is surrounded by positive black men, we're saying he doesn't even need to have a formalized mentoring relationship. He just needs to be in an environment where there's positive black men, and it has an epigenetic impact on him. We can literally dictate the biological expression of our young men just by our very presence. This is heavy stuff, man. This is heavy stuff. And so what we're saying, My Brother's Keeper is saying, no, that means if that's the case, then we want to train men. We want to recruit brothers to commit themselves to leading, leveraging, and lifting. We want to recruit men and build a whole vanguard, thousands of men of color that have committed themselves to this, because we know if you are in the very environment, the implications on our posterity are endless.
Wow.
They're endless. And so that's one piece. We understand fathers. This is why we created the MBK Fatherhood Institute, where we're supporting young fathers of color, 18 to 24, right? how do we support you? How do we put you into some training? We have, in partnership with Finishers EMI, they've created a framework called University of Standards, where we talk through manhood, we talk through fatherhood. What does it mean to talk through with a young man around humility, around honor, around valor, right? Mm-hmm. What is it to talk about self-governance? How do we go through the training and then commit through this collective impact framework, workforce development? Then how do we think through socio-emotional management? And then just the practical life skills, how to change a diaper, how to navigate resources, so on and so forth, to ensure that your child has everything that they need. And then as a father, your responsibility to create the atmosphere so your child can thrive. We're trying to build a framework, Travis, by which the environment that our young people are in, that it does something to them biologically. Like psychologically, they're saying there's nothing I can't do. There's nothing I can't do.
Exactly.
And literally, we want to be able to provide the resources. So when you say there's nothing I can't do, it is a true statement. Not only do you believe it in your heart of hearts, but the environment is saying, oh, there's so many different organizations and support that I can lean on that affirms the fullness of my humanity, no matter where I turn. Whether I'm going back to CMS, whether I'm in charter schools, homeschool, whether I'm engaging with YMCA, whether I'm engaging with the earth, it doesn't matter where I go. Mm-hmm. The fullness of my humanity is being affirmed at every angle. That's an environment of belonging, brother, that we're kind of committing ourselves to. And this is why we love being in partnership with GRADIFY to think through what that environment looks like, no matter whether it's physical or digital. We want digital transformation. We need doggone physical and environmental transformation. We no matter where you find yourself, young man, no matter where you find in the virtual world or the physical world, we want to make sure that your humanity is affirmed and you have all the support you need to fulfill your purpose.
That's powerful. That's powerful. What you just articulated is that you have done the work and all of us that are in MBK are thinking through and creating the environment.
I appreciate you saying us, by the way, too, brother. I appreciate you saying us.
Absolutely. Yes, because we work, it's beyond you all partnering and utilizing GRADIFY. I am a part of the Vanguard as well. And for you to go from Chicago, being in an environment to working in that environment as well, creating a dividing line between what a student sees and then what they can be, to now you're at this position in your life where you're the executive director of a major organization, buy-in from the city, county, and school system. And now you're saying, okay, what else can I add to this environment? And now you're saying, look, I'm going to bring Black and brown fathers into this framework so that we can solidify and build a reinforcement of sorts, and also support system, social capital of how we can deploy and support you.
That's right.
Because what we're thinking through is how do we create something that doesn't even exist, right? But there is a part of this where we can look back to environments that weren't interrupted, and if they may have been interrupted, they still left us enough breadcrumbs to still show, and your Jegnas, your people that have trained you.
That's right.
You can rely on, because they're connected to that too.
That's right.
Before we move on to my next question, I come from Jacksonville, North Carolina, Pentecostal church. We built our own school. Independent. It wasn't a charter school. It was a private school.
Wow. And
we were the first, and the school it's been there for 30 years. So I've been a part of that too. So that informs my work as well. And that epigenetically let me know that I could do anything.
That's right.
I can build anything. And when I became a teacher and I saw that our students didn't have this resource, and I saw how much the world was going digital, if we just did a analog program, we would already be behind.
That's right.
But the fact that we're actually looking at and understanding that our young people are spending more hours digitally than in analog. So that led me to say, look, we need to build an environment where they still feel reinforced, and we can be a part of that ecosystem, those apps that they're using, and they still get connected to the positivity in their life. That's GRADIFY. And, what does it mean for you to build this culture, the outcomes? What are outcomes? We talk about college and career readiness, but I'm really of the mindset that we have to go beyond that term, and we're using college and career culture.
That's right.
Because it speaks to environment, right? And what are we looking to do at My Brother's Keeper to build that, a college and career culture. And what Councilman Braxton Winston, who's also a part of MBK, he's a
founding board member. It was him and former Councilman James Mitchell, who advocated on the behalf of Black and brown boys in Charlotte to say we need to bring MBK here and we need to support it.
Exactly.
And so some of our preliminary kind of resources came from the city based on their commitment and continued support. He's a part of the Vanguard. He's going through the Vanguard training. He's a founding board member.
Wow.
So he's all in. He's all in.
And he coined the term systemic success.
Systemic liberation.
Systemic liberation. So
yes, sir.
What we're looking at is, because this whole country is about freedom.
That's right.
Right. But freedom to different communities mean different things.
That's right.
So what does that look like? What does that culture look like? Because when we just start talking about college and career to a student in an environment, they're thinking that's more school, that's more education.
Yep.
They don't connect it to economic. They don't connect it to prosperity.
That's right.
They don't connect it to designing their life. They connect it to more work.
That's right.
And I don't think that we've done a good enough job of selling them on the experience that you had at your D3 school, at your seminary. They don't understand, even though you went through a process where you went to the Army, you had probably, a little bit more established, so you were able to go to college with a little bit more. But that experience is something that I believe almost any student should experience, because you're still growing.
That's right.
You're taken out of your environment and put in another environment, but you're dropped into an environment where you have your own identity, and you then build from there. So what does it mean for us to have a college and career culture, and how does GRADIFY help power that?
So the beautiful thing about thinking through the culture as opposed to just being ready is that if we concentrate on the culture, they'll be ready.
Exactly.
And so because we're not thinking about the collective, we have a whole bunch of individuals that are ready, as opposed to the collective being ready. Now you have a choice. Now when we say exercise your agency, you can exercise your agency very informed around being very purposeful in how you move. And this is what I believe GRADIFY brings to the table. So it is that culture we're saying, no, young people need to be exposed to this at a very young age. And they need to your point, understand the implications of it all. So what are the implications for building wealth? What are the implications for, hey, when I started breaking down to the young men, I'll use Ranson for instance. Man, I miss my young man from Ranson. Shout out to Ranson. As a matter of fact, I got we're bringing the crew back together.
I was about to say.
We're bringing the crew back together. To kind of talk through some things. But when you think through what we were doing in Ranson, when I started to tell these young men that prisons were built based on 3rd and 4th grade reading scores. See, listen, when I was going to Chatham Youth Development Center, right, where the young men are locked up and locked down, and I would go through the history and start breaking some things down about the 13th Amendment and the implications and so on. When I started to do these things, you start to see folks kind of like, oh, hold on, why nobody ever taught us that? Well, if you live in a community, what happens when you live in a community and you start telling middle schoolers that live in a community where they see gentrification happening? All of a sudden you start telling them like, yo, if you have 5 houses on the block, each one of these houses costs $100,000. All you have to put down is 10% on this, and boo boo. And you start breaking down some things like it's like that. It's like that.
But then you can start talking about why though.
Yeah.
Why? Why should you do this? Because of your posterity.
I'm telling you.
And specifically because you are working with men and young men. What is it? What are my goals as a young man?
Yeah.
Purpose, what does it mean?
Vision. Yeah.
Right. What it mean when I cross that line and become a father? What are my goals then?
Yeah.
My goals for my posterity should be to build up enough spiritual and personal wealth that then you can share that with, you know, and that's just the system that we live in.
That's the system that we live in, man. And so to your point around culture, bro, this to me is what makes GRADIFY such a jewel, is that now young people can like see it. Like it's not even about like just kind of somebody pontificating about it. It's like, no, you get activated on the platform. You take this personality test. Now, all of a sudden, every single job that aligns with who you are, it comes directly to you. And then you can see it from, if you take your education serious, all the way to you take it as serious as I can possibly take it.
Exactly.
And every single occupation is there with the salary, it's like, hold on. Now you start to like, hold on, this is real. Oh yeah, it's real. Now I can start to develop that plan. And what's beautiful about the way that I can start developing that plan is that I can literally have folks interacting with me, no matter where they are, interacting with me to say, hey, great job on this, good buddy. Hey, by the way, we have Braxton Winston wants to kind of sit down with you all and talk through what it means, especially for all the young men that want to be in public service, so on and so forth. Hey, let's talk through what being a politician is really about. Oh man, it's like all these things now it becomes real. And so now the culture is starting to develop, right? We're starting to kind of solidify some principles, and like the zeitgeist to the point earlier is starting to be kind of calcified, right? We're like, oh wow, like yeah, there's now what we can do. You know, there's an organization called Year Up. They kind of college and career ready.
Amazing organization.
Yeah, they're doing outstanding work. My wife works for that organization. Shout out to Year Up. But one of the things that they say, and I love, is that high expectations, high support. Right.
I love that.
So a lot of times we like to come to our young men and hold them accountable to a knowledge they haven't obtained. To possibilities that they haven't been exposed to, and we want to hold them accountable. Yeah, you got to be you trying to get them college and career ready. We're trying to build a culture, because now once they understand the culture, now I can put a demand on that expression. Now I can hold you accountable to certain standards and principles, because now you've come to a knowledge of it. But that requires us to be in relationship. Yeah. That requires us to be in relationship, and what GRADIFY allows us to do is be in relationship.
It requires relationship.
Yeah, bro.
No one's going to allow a stranger to come up and express to them that they aren't quite hitting the mark.
And we do that over and over and over and over again.
It becomes a language in and of itself.
Yeah, like, oh, you don't really care about me.
Right.
I'm decent.
Right. But I like what we're talking about when we talk about the culture and what we build, because the culture be whatever we build.
Yeah, man.
That's what the culture is going to be.
That's right.
Whatever we build in the analog and the digital world. Because the digital world, if I challenge anyone listening to this podcast to turn on your screen time counter if you have a Mac, if you have an iOS, and they will tell you how much screen time you're taking. And it's irrefutable how much time we spend looking at the screen. Yeah. And
wow.
And what these great pioneers in tech have done is they've expressed, how can we build bigger connections? I believe GRADIFY is there to build these connections that can last a lifetime, and then we can change you from being the student to now being the mentor, to then being the professional, to then keeping that cycle going.
Exactly, the cycle. And another thing that you know. Your humility is great, but one thing that GRADIFY does is that it eliminates excuses for institutions If you are an institution that is supposedly committed to young people being on a college and career track, if you are committed to whatever you saying you committed to, what GRADIFY does is it eliminates every excuse. No, take the platform, get all your young people on the platform so they can go through the personality framework so every single job is now at their disposal. So now where do we go from here? You dig what I'm saying? Now all you have to do is support them along the journey.
Exactly.
So every excuse is now eliminated. And now what you can do is, because GRADIFY and My Brother's Keeper Charlotte-Mecklenburg are in partnership, now as you get your young people there, now My Brother's Keeper can help support you get those professionals that you need, that activation. You need some brothers in some in different industries. We can do that. That's how we have the Vanguard is broken down. We have them compartmentalized along their industry. Oh.
You were pretty modest as well, but your board members are pretty. They
Without
are,
question.
and all brothers are significant. But the people that are on your board are C-suite, elected officials.
That's right.
These are men who said enough is enough.
That's right.
We're stepping up to the plate. And this stops now.
It stops now.
And I like what you said about the accountability, because working in education, it's tough on teachers to perform to the standards, but still you have to have accountability.
Got to have accountability.
How are we going to make recompense if we're spending billions of dollars in these frameworks, whether it's public school system, whether it's a county, who they have their own services.
That's right.
How do we then tell the citizenry that we're getting results for you? Because I think what the collective wants to know is, okay, great. If you're going to give public services, great. If you're going to do education, great. But what are even the taxpayers trying to say? What's the return on investment?
And we treat the citizenry, to your point, as if their tax dollar is not an investment, as if you should not be asking for the return on investment. No, we need a return.
Exactly.
Like everybody needs a return.
Exactly.
On the investment. And what we don't need is kind of arbitrary, unthoughtful, investments. We need to make sure that the type of investments are being informed by those that are proximate to the issues, to the challenges, so we can ensure that investment is laser focused to get at the heart of why it exists, treating and being a part of creating that culture that we are all desiring to live in, man. So yeah.
This has been an amazing conversation because you, as a public servant, have taken your own experiences as a young man, a young black man in this country, and you said, I'm not just going to just wallow in this. You look around to your ancestors, you look around to the strong black men in your community, and you grab hold to that strength, and now through a journey brought you to Charlotte to partner with this organization, to lead the organization, and then you're now in creative mode.
Yeah.
If you had a genie right here, if you had a genie right now, and this is kind of on the spot, you had 3 wishes right now that would help you actually achieve the goals of your work.
Yeah.
You got 3 wishes right now. You have to do them within the next 10 minutes.
Outstanding. So one that I would first ask the genie for the resources that could sustain the work, right? And those resources would be significant resources. I don't know any. I don't know.
You might
any,
as well go ahead and say it.
I don't know any black-led billion-dollar organizations.
Gotcha.
All right.
NGOs.
The NGOs. Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know any of those. That's where my mind is, because there's work to be done.
There's levels. There's definitely levels. There's levels to the culture that you could build with $1 billion.
No question about it.
You're talking about international travel. talking about land purchase. That would be a
there's
total.
so
that,
much,
that would
right?
be
So what
levels to
happens
that,
is
yeah.
you have so many NGOs here locally that are black led. What you'll find is they're spending 60 to 70% of their time not on the mission, on trying to find resources to stay afloat.
Sure.
Right? So that's why I would be asking that Genie for the resources, so the folks that I know that are doing transformative work, you don't have to worry about keeping the organization afloat, right? You just got to worry about continuing to impact and change lives, continue to be a part of building the culture. One. Two, I would ask this Genie, man. I would ask this Genie, man, for I would ask this Genie, man, for kind of some to erase all the trauma, brother.
Wow.
To erase the trauma, man. That we can be that folks are not kind of led by the experiences, historical context, and all this. Like no, you can just move freely without the systemic racism and structural crap that we have to deal with.
And
just kind of
just get rid of it all.
That I want it all to be just so you can just be. I mean, this is a human endeavor
because it's love at the center.
Because there's love at the center of it, good brother.
Yeah.
So I don't, I hate to see people in pain. People struggling. You
Trauma.
know what I'm saying?
It's
Trauma, brother. So if we can. We can be free in our minds, good brother, and be mentally healthy. No, that would be one of my goals as well. And then thirdly, that literally the culture is there. That if I could rub the Genie and say, bam, this is what I want. I want to be able to be in an environment by which everyone can thrive. Like the environment is that there are no impediments to you fulfilling the purpose for which you were created. Yeah, man, that would be my three, man. It would be significant resources to sustain and institutionalize the work, to resource the entire environment. We just want to do the work.
Sure.
I don't want brothers and sisters who are leading organizations to have to struggle to keep the doggone lights on, but they doing outstanding work. But I got to spend 70% of my time trying to make sure the hustle and bustle and sitting in front of people who really don't give a frick about you or your people, trying to convince them to resource you. No, I don't want. I want to be able to resource the people, resource the organizations. I want to be able to eliminate the mental illness, the trauma that keeps us stagnant, that impedes us being able to think bigger.
The toxic stress,
brother. Like all of it, man. I want us to be, living in an environment, man, by which we're psychologically healthy, right? We have sound minds. You know what I mean? Like we're sound minded, and then lastly, man, just kind of I forget what I said. What was the last thing that I said? That we just live in an environment by which
the environment is
brother.
there.
Like
the environment is there.
You know that when you're born, as you just free, and it's not until the zeitgeist of the culture, whatever environment you find yourself in, after a while, it starts to get you, because we know that 0 to 5 is when your mind is at its peak.
Exactly.
It's at its peak. So if you're in an environment by which we can all thrive, third grade reading scores, that means nothing, because the culture. Everybody's reading a third grade reading score when they get to third grade. Why? Because the culture is already established.
Exactly.
The environment is conducive.
Imagine that world.
Come on, man.
Imagine that world. That's
a world without prisons.
That is amazing.
Come on, man.
That's amazing to behold. And I'm proud to do the work with you.
Likewise, good brother. Yes, sir.
Honored to share this time with you, man. And that is a wrap for our first ever Engage with GRADIFY episode. Thank you for coming down.
Peace and blessings, good brother. Thank you for having me.
Peace and blessings.
Yes, sir.
Peace and blessings.
You've been listening to Engage with GRADIFY. This podcast is executive produced by GRADIFY in collaboration with media partner Mystery Projects.